When you're in a fat loss phase, one of the things that we deal with when we're in a fat loss phase is hunger. And hunger is a very complex topic. There's a lot of things involved when it comes to hunger. And you don't have to be afraid of it. You don't have to let it control you. But today I'm going to talk all about hunger. And we're going to discuss the different types of hunger and ways to navigate your fat loss journey and how to deal with hunger. Let's get into it. Hey, girl, welcome back to our show. Whatever you're doing right now, thank you so much for tuning in and thanks for being a dedicated listener. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. Cannot thank you enough for being here. Today, as you know, we're going to be talking about hunger. I don't know, honestly, if I've actually got into this topic on the podcast or not. Anyway, my goal is to help you maybe better understand hunger for yourself on this episode, maybe answer some questions, give you some insight maybe that you didn't know. I'm also going to share a little bit about my own personal experience with hunger and how I've tend to deal with it, and different phases that I've been on, especially whenever I put myself in a cut. This episode was inspired by one of our wonderful Rock That Fitness members. We discussed this in a not too no in a recent coaching call. It came up, and the question that came up was, should I be eating 5 meals a day and 2 snacks, or should I be eating 5 small meals a day? That was the original question. And then the question that I had was, what is the reason for this question? Like, I'm always going to dive a little deeper because there's usually something else behind that. And there's not a simple answer because, quite frankly, meal timing is a very individual thing. It just depends on the person. And what is the reason we're asking when we want to eat? Well, after we discussed this a little bit, it came down to, experiencing eating a meal and then just 2 hours later being hungry again. And so what we're talking about is really more specific to somebody who is in a fat loss phase, somebody who is in a calorie deficit, or, trying to stay inside of their calorie deficit and handling hunger during that time. And so there's really a lot. It's a very complex thing. It's not that simple. So anyway, because of that, I was inspired to talk about this topic of hunger. So let me share a little bit, I guess, briefly. Like I say, I'm going to talk a little bit about my story when it comes to hunger, being in a calorie deficit, fat loss phases I have been in. I am going to also have a little disclaimer here for who this is for, who it's not for. And then I'm going to talk about these understanding hunger in the fat loss phase. Like, what is hunger, and what causes hunger. And then I'm going to talk about two types of hunger. Hunger being like the physical type of hunger or the emotional type of hunger. I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of hunger, but I'm just going to kind of group them to make this simple today. Physical hunger versus emotional hunger. And then I want to talk about some practical tips on how we can navigate being hungry, things we can do, how we can, some practical tips on what we can do. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, what else do I have here? I'm looking at my notes here. Yeah. I'm gonna give you some details to some of those things. But yeah, that's basically what I'm gonna talk about. And I'm excited for this episode because I really do believe that when we have a really clear understanding of our own personal hunger and we know how to handle it, we can be super duper consistent and successful being in our fat loss phase. So let me talk a little bit about myself. So, I don't think that whenever I was going through my fat loss phase that I put a whole lot of thought into this. Obviously, I've been coaching now for several years, so I've learned a lot, not just about my own journey, but about how many women handle their own hunger during a fat loss phase. But for me, when I was going through my fat loss, my big transformation time in my fat loss journey, the original transformation, right? Because I've had several fat loss phases. Not that I've had a lot of fat to lose since my transformation, but from time to time, I like to put myself in a calorie deficit and be in a cut to just get a little leaner. And that's a different story. But when I was in my transformation period of time, my fat loss phase in 2017 and 18, my goal was always to give my body the right foods that would prevent me from being hungry. I didn't want to be hungry. And I think for some people that can work, but also I think for some people it's just different. We're all different. So when I share with you my own personal journey when it comes to how I navigate hunger, understand that this is very individual. You're different, everybody's different, and how you handle it is going to be different. But for me, during that time when I was in my fat loss phase of my journey, I remember the things that I did. And I know that for myself in those early stages back then, when I think about it, hunger was something that I didn't want. Like I was going to avoid it as much as possible. I always carried snacks with me. I was thinking, what was I going to eat when I got hungry? It just was this thing like hunger was bad. And I think a lot of us think that sometimes. So hopefully we can clear that up a little bit today too. Um, but then I started to understand more about hunger and what kind of things that I needed to take into consideration. So like I used to panic, right? That I was gonna be hungry and I wasn't gonna have anything to eat. And that's something we need to talk about today. It doesn't mean that something is wrong. Now, I know that now, but because I see it differently. Hunger is a feedback signal. It's a signal. It's a communication from my body. And yes, there's different levels of hunger, and we can talk about that too. But I have changed. I have learned that, and how I handle hunger today is very different than how I handled it back in the day when I was going through my transformation. But of course, as a nurse, I had that edge, right? Because I understood nutrition, I understood the anatomy, physiology, and that kind of stuff. So I had that kind of an edge. And I will, like, this is the stuff I'm going to talk about today is going to make sense. It's going to help you in the same way. But things that impact our hunger. I knew these things, right? Like hydration. Am I getting plenty of water? Am I getting optimal protein? Am I making sure I'm getting all the, vegetables and fruits to make sure I have fiber in my diet? And, that fiber to bulk up the food in your digestive system to keep you satisfied. Am I getting optimal sleep? Is my stress managed? Because these things really do matter when it comes to hunger. And I knew that. And also, thinking about things like what was your activity level the day before? What is your activity level today? And how was your sleep, really? Because, and how was your food intake yesterday? That too, that also plays a role. But sleep plays a role, and I'll discuss that as well. So one of the little disclaimers that I do feel like is very important for me to mention here on the podcast today is that this episode is not necessarily for somebody who is struggling with an eating disorder, or somebody who has a medical condition where hunger hormones are affected. So this isn't for that. So I'm sure there's some things in here that can help you understand hunger, I hope, but it's not intended for you. So if you do have some kind of a eating disorder, or obviously if you have a medical condition, because there are conditions that happen, medical conditions that people have that are are around this. I'm tripping over my words. I'm not going to re-record this. But there are some conditions where somebody actually has some issues in their hormones, their hunger and satiation hormones, where their body is not signaling properly. So I'm not addressing that today. I'm just going to be addressing my ladies that are in a fat loss phase, those of you who are intentionally in a calorie deficit and you're noticing hunger showing up. And, hunger is part of the process. But we want to understand what kind of hunger it is and how we can manage and stay empowered regarding hunger rather than feeling frustrated with it. So Again, by the end of this episode, I think you're going to know how to tell the difference between physical hunger and emotional hunger and how to respond to each one and practical ways to navigate hunger, like, going through while you're going through your fat loss phase. So let me explain. When you are in, let's understand hunger during a fat loss phase. When you're in a calorie deficit, some hunger is expected. So let's just get that clear right now. It's very normal. It's a normal physiological thing, physiological response. It's not a failure of willpower. Something's not wrong with you. You're not doing it wrong. You absolutely can expect to have some hunger while you're in a fat loss phase. That's normal. If you're not having any hunger in a fat loss phase, that's a whole different topic. And maybe you're not in a fat loss phase. Maybe you are not in a calorie deficit. But side note, once again, this is a very complex issue. So the goal isn't to eliminate hunger entirely, but to understand how to manage it so that it doesn't derail us and derail our consistency while we're in our fat loss phase. So I like to teach that some hunger can be a sign that you're in the right zone in your fat loss. Mild, manageable, not, you know, starving. Gotta just get in the pantry and eat everything in there. We don't want a type of hunger that feels all consuming. Just a little signal that you're hungry, maybe a little growling. You know when you're hungry, right? Um, so some red flags if you're feeling hungry, the extreme, constant, obsessive, these are things to consider. And that's something you probably want to consider having to do with maybe reevaluating your calorie deficit. Because if you are always hungry, you're always starving, then that's something to address. You may not be getting enough nutrients. You may not be getting enough food. So that's a red flag. Hungry all the time, that's a problem. So let me talk about hunger real quick, just physiologically, scientifically. There are two hormones that we need to be aware of when it comes to hunger. We have a hormone called ghrelin and we have a hormone called leptin. And ghrelin is the hormone that signals our body that we are hungry. Leptin is going to signal our body that we are satisfied. We are not hungry. And I always think of these like ghrelin is like the gremlin that's hungry. And leptin, I don't even know. Help me out. What are we going to use for leptin? I don't know, because I just know that the ghrelin is all I need to know. I like when leptins are set or good. I like when those leptins levels are high at an appropriate time. But ghrelin, it's, produced in your stomach and it signals your brain when it's time to eat. So these levels are going to rise right before it's time to eat, when you want to eat, and they're going to drop after you're eating. So whether you're dieting or eating too little for too long, that's going to keep ghrelin levels higher. So it's going to make you feel hungrier. And leptin is that hormone that means stop. So this is produced by fat cells, and this signals fullness and tells your brain you have enough energy. So when the body fat and calories drop, then leptin levels are going to fall, meaning you feel less satisfied even after you're eating. So these hormones can also fluctuate more dramatically with stress. That's exactly what I started out saying, is that there's more to it than just getting enough food, not getting enough food. I mean, we need to discuss, are we getting optimal protein? Are we getting optimal rest and sleep? And are we managing our stress? And ladies, if we're dealing with perimenopause or menopause, that's also going to impact our hunger cues. So it makes managing hunger a little bit trickier. But the good news is we can learn individually what we need to do for our own personal needs when it comes to hunger. Now let's talk about the two types of hunger. There's physical hunger and there's emotional hunger. I know I said, I was just going to keep this simple with physical and emotional. Emotional hunger, right, can be more than just emotional, like sad, depressed, angry. More than that, it can also be triggered by environment. surrounding, where we are, events, things that are going on. So I kind of group this all together because being in an environment, being in some kind of, being at an event or something that triggers that emotional, like there's an emotion that's attached to that event or the environment that you're in. And so that emotion is, that's part of it, right? So that's why I'm kind of putting this, just why I'm trying to make this very simple. Um, Physical hunger is more, it comes on gradually, and you can feel this in your body because you feel like your stomach is empty and you may be feeling low energy, and maybe you're having some growling in your stomach. I personally, I personally know that if my stomach is growling, I've gone a little bit too long. And that's further than I want to go when it comes to my own personal hunger. Or maybe you're slightly a little irritable. You can tell that you're hungry. But physical hunger is something that you can satisfy by eating like just a meal, like a regular meal, and it'll go away after you eat it. So if you're hungry, if you're having physical hunger, then any food will satisfy it. This is kind of this is a clue, right? This is a clue to know. If you're having physical hunger and you ask yourself, I am hungry, I'm willing to eat anything, right? Then you're probably feeling physical hunger. In other words, if you are saying, I'm hungry and I want a bag of chips, or I want to have this candy bar, I'm hungry, um, and I asked you, okay, but you're hungry. Would you eat this, yogurt and fruit, or, would you eat rice and broccoli? And you say no, then we need to reevaluate. It's probably emotional hunger. But if you're willing to eat anything because you're hungry, it's then definitely a sign that you're really having a physical hunger. Like if you're willing to eat chicken, rice, and broccoli right now, it's probably a physical hunger. So that would be body based, right? So emotional hunger is going to be mind based, and this comes on suddenly. So it's often tied to like stress, boredom, fatigue, or it's like reward, like a long, hard day at work, and you just want to eat something because you're stressed, and it's like a reward, like, oh, I've had such a hard day. I just want to eat something. I'm hungry. Or you're craving something specific. This one is typically the case, right? It's like you want something quick and you want something tasty that's comfort. Something quick, tasty comfort food. Think about it for yourself. I don't know. What is that for me? I don't know exactly. I think I'm kind of weird. If I tend to like be happy with my own. I just have learned how to recognize the emotion and the physical. Not to say that I don't ever have emotional hunger, because yes, I do deal with it too. And from time to time, I will give in to emotional hunger. So I think that's a great side note here, is that we don't want to make either one of these right or wrong. They're not. They are what they are. And we want to put neutrality on them and just understand them, you know, based on your goals. Are what you want to do here? And so I say that because I know there have been times that I have given in to my emotional hunger, and I have eaten an entire bag of chips. Yes, I have. And even in the middle of it, knowing that I've done that, and saying to myself, I can tell this is emotional hunger, but it's not a pattern, right? So that's the part that's different, that if it's not a pattern, right? And I'm just saying that because we're all human and it happens to all of us. So emotional hunger comes on suddenly. You crave something specific. So if suddenly you're craving chocolate, or you're craving, I don't know, salty chips or something that's specific. Like if I said, "Here, you're hungry, here, have an apple," and you're like, "No, I don't feel like having an apple." Well, I really want to have a piece of chocolate. That's probably an emotional trigger. It's probably something causing you to want, to eat something, and it's an emotional thing. But eating it doesn't necessarily satisfy that hunger, right? It's what typically happens for a lot of people is it brings on guilt and shame, because maybe afterwards you've been working on your fat loss journey, you're working on your fat loss, and you were working on staying in a calorie deficit, but you decided without thinking to have something outside of your plan. And this will often, and it was an emotional thing. So you made a decision on emotions. You didn't think about it. You had the food item and now you're feeling guilt about it because you are, you, like I said, you had this goal and you feel like you kind of went outside of the lines and now you're feeling frustration afterwards. So, um, yeah. And so I think that's something to be aware of, that it's not bad or good. It's not like we're going to, we're not going to grade this, but it really just comes down to what's going on, and is this physical hunger? Is this emotional hunger? And then learning to identify which one it is for you. Um, what else was I going to talk about? Oh, I know what it was. It's like, I want to say this because there's two, right? There's the physical and the emotional, but also sometimes it's both, right? Especially in a fat loss phase, because you could be slightly hungry and you can be emotionally tired. So you could have both. So let's not just separate. Is this emotional hunger? Is this physical hunger? Because it could actually be both. And what do we want to do with that? I think the biggest key here is awareness. And you probably already knew I was going to say that. But if we really want to be successful in our fat loss journey, we have to learn to become aware, because we have to know and pause, instead of just being on autopilot. That moment when you realize you're hungry, whether it's physical or whether it's emotional, you stop and say, okay, I'm hungry, but am I really hungry? Identify. When was the last time that you ate? How many hours ago was it? How much protein did you have in that meal? Is your stomach actually feeling hungry? And are you having something happening right now that is creating an emotion that's causing you to want to eat some food? Just taking a pause, right? And asking yourself, what am I really hungry for? What type of food am I hungry for right now? And I think when you ask yourself what type of food you're hungry for in that moment, that's going to be a great indicator, because like I said, if you're hungry for something quick, fast, comforting your emotions, and it's probably an emotional hunger. But if you're willing to eat just about anything because you are hungry, then by golly, it's probably the physical hunger for you. So let's talk about some practical tips to navigate your hunger in their fat loss phase. And I'll just interject here thoughts that I have for myself and what I've experienced in my own hunger. So for physical hunger, like I've said before, and I always say, and most women are not getting enough protein anyway, so we want to prioritize protein in our diet. And not just like, oh yeah, I'm getting protein. I'm eating chicken, I'm eating tuna, I'm eating fish, but are you getting optimal amounts of protein? And this is key, like definitely key for staying satisfied. And not being hungry as often. So protein is going to be key. How much protein do we need? And I'm going to say it, you want to aim to have your meals to be built around protein, but also to have anywhere from 25 to 35 grams of protein per meal. But if you're not tracking your food on a food tracker, how will you know, right? But on a side note with that, how much protein do you get? How much protein should a woman have on a daily basis? And it's going to be dependent on you and what is your ideal weight right now, or what is your ideal healthy weight that you're shooting for? And so you can do a simple calculation of 0.7 or 0.8 grams per goal body weight in pounds times goal body weight in pounds. That would be 0.7 or 0.8 times that number of your goal body weight, or 1 times your goal body weight, which would be that amount. So if it is, your goal body weight is 140 pounds, then we want to be shooting for that, but we don't jump right into it. Like, let's let our body adapt to that amount of protein. start increasing a little bit at a time. But make a range, do a range, 0.7, 0.8 grams of protein, up to 1 gram of protein per goal body weight in pounds. Just throwing that out there because sometimes people don't remember. And if you want to be tracking that protein, it's important to know how to do that. So weigh it on a scale, look at a food tracker and see how many grams, how many ounces of this food, of this protein, how many grams of protein is this food, right? Look in a food tracker and find out. So see, protein, prioritize protein. This is definitely going to be one of the biggest keys to helping you stay satisfied and not feeling as hungry in your fat loss phase. And also, you want to maintain getting optimal protein, right? Because we want to make sure that our muscles are getting protein. Maintaining muscle mass, and especially if you're building, you're working out in the gym, trying to build muscle and strength, get your protein. All right, we want to also include high volume foods, a high volume of fiber like veggies, fruits, whole grains. And how many grams of fiber do we need? And I think this is something also as a side note that we need to just kind of address, is that obviously when you're in a fat loss phase, your calories are going to be fewer. So we need to take that into consideration for your fiber. And women over 40, we need to be getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 grams per day. But that's if we're in maintenance, right? If we're in a maintenance phase. But when we're in a calorie deficit, the total food volume that we're eating is going down. So hitting that full 25 to 30 grams of fiber can be a little bit more challenging, right? So I'm bringing that up because I just think that sometimes we don't take into account that, we're eating, less food. So it's going to be a little bit more challenging to be hitting those numbers. And so let me just take a side note here, a little digression on fat loss phase and what your target ranges might be for fiber in your diet. You want to aim for about 14 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories consumed. So if I'm just throwing this out there, if your calorie deficit is 2,000 calories, we're looking at 27 to 28 grams of fiber daily. Again, how are you going to know you're hitting your fiber, right? We want to be tracking this in a food tracker that's going to tell you how many grams of protein you're getting daily on, depending on the foods that you're putting in there. If you are on a calorie deficit of 1,800 calories, we're looking at around 25 grams of fiber. 1,600 calories, 22 to 23 grams of fiber. 1,400 calories a day, about 20 grams of fiber. So something to be said about fiber, ladies. If you haven't been getting optimal amounts of fiber and you start tracking and realizing you're only getting 8 grams of fiber, 10 grams of fiber, just be sure that you incrementally increase that fiber slowly over time, because if you just bombard your body with fiber or even bombard your body with protein, your digestive system is not going to be happy with that. You can get bloating, not feeling good, all those kind of things. So let's respect our digestive system and let's do this slowly over time. Okay, what else is going to impact and help us stay satisfied while we're in a fat loss phase? Staying hydrated, because if we are not hydrated, that's a huge thing that mimics hunger. So yeah, you get your water in. That's exactly what I do this all the time. Am I really hungry? I'm going to chug the water, this is a great moment to do that. I'm going to take a moment and take some water in right now. All right. We want to distribute our meals evenly over the day. This is another way that we can curb hunger. We don't want to skip meals or go too long between. And this is something too I want to encourage you to do when it comes to meal timing. What matters the most when you're in a fat loss phase is that you're getting, what matters the most is not the meal timing as much as how many calories you're getting in a 24-hour period of time, how many grams of protein you're getting in 24 hours of time. It's not that there's any one meal timing that's perfect for you. And this is also something, this is really important to think about for yourself. How often are you eating, and are you paying attention to how long it takes for your body to get hungry after you've had a meal? And this is a skill, starting to really, really focus in and know when you're hungry after a meal and thinking about, okay, it's been 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and my last meal I had this many grams of protein, I had this, I had veggies, whatever it was. But then you just start to really understand your body and when it's going to get hungry. So for some of us, that's a pattern, right? The pattern that your body gets used to. You actually train your body when it's going to get hungry. This is the most important reason why you want to do your best to maintain some kind of a schedule with your eating, rather than just eating all over the place where you don't really know your body, and your body doesn't even know when you're going to. So if you want to balance, you want to maintain your glucose levels over time, you want to maintain your hormone levels, your ghrelin and leptin levels, then I recommend that you start becoming more in tune and aware of your hunger between meals. And don't be afraid to front load your calories and protein in your day, because if you're like me, we're doing most of our work and our thinking in the first part of our day. We need the calories. Our brain needs the calories. Our body needs the calories to function and stay active and do the things, our workouts and all of that. I know some women have this, they have a tendency, they are, you know, they're tempted to just wait. Like, I'm going to eat as few calories as I can the first part of my day, and then I am going to just try to eat all my calories later, because what if I eat all my calories in the first part of my day and then I run out of calories and I'm going to be hungry, because we're afraid of hunger, right? I used to do that. I used to do the same thing. But I want to encourage you to experiment here too. Front load your food and see what happens. It's just an experiment, and hunger is not right or wrong. It's not a bad thing. It's not an emergency. It's normal. But what you will find, and what I started to learn early back in the day, is that I could trust that if I gave my body what it needed, food wise, protein, vegetables, all those things, if I was front loading that stuff in the day, guess what happened? My hunger started to be more balanced out. I didn't come home like a ravished, hungry monster after the end of a work day as a nurse with all the stress. I started to learn that I could trust, and you start to learn to trust your skills in this, and you start to know what your body needs. But for most of us, it's helpful to distribute our protein throughout the day. Plan your meals around your protein. Distribute your meals. Don't skip them. Just have them throughout your day. But again, it's an experiment. Give it a try. See what happens for you. The next one, getting optimal sleep. I could say get enough sleep, but we all know there's a difference between getting quantity of sleep and getting quality sleep. So lack of sleep is definitely going to increase hunger, because when you are tired, your body is fatigued, sleepy, it wants energy, right? Because what it really needs is sleep. But you're going to be wanting to eat all day, because what you really need is sleep. But when you're aware of that, you'll know. I've had days like that too myself. I will have a day where I'm like hungry, eating all day, and I'm thinking, what is wrong? And then I realize, you know what? Yeah, because I'm eating like my normal amount of calories and protein. My activity level is the same. And I'm like, why am I hungry all day? What is going on? And it's basically, oh, well, I didn't get optimal sleep last night. That could definitely be playing a role in this. All right. So those are some ways to curb your hunger. And I just want to say once again, hunger is not an emergency, but don't wait until you're starving. So it's okay to have a plan. I'm carrying my healthy eating on the go bars, right, inside of my console in my car. And I don't have the ones with the chocolate in there or anything, because I don't want them to melt. So I have I have peanut butter in there, and I have chia seed in there for sure, because those keep well inside of the console of my car. Yeah, so that's okay to do that. But I would definitely question this idea that you have to be afraid of hunger. I think if you're never hungry and you're in a fat loss phase and you aren't seeing any results, then you probably are not in a fat loss phase, and we need to get in touch with our hunger. I think that's really important. It's part of the skill of knowing what your body needs individually. Okay, so let's talk about emotional hunger. This one is can come on with so many things, right? With stress, with being tired, or feeling alone. It comes from a place of needing to satisfy something that's lacking in our emotions, in our feelings. So we've got to learn this cope. We need to learn how to cope with it. But first, we need to be aware of it when we're feeling these things. We're feeling tired, emotional, sleepy, whatever, angry, sad, stressed, or even, I mean, not even those negative emotions, even emotions of excitement and joy can bring on, I'm hungry, but you're not really physically hungry and you just want to eat. And that's okay too, right? Because how many times we're not really hungry, we're at a party and we're celebrating and we want to have a piece of that cake because it's a celebration time. I don't think you're wrong for that. It's all within your goals. It's all within your power to choose that. Just choose it with awareness and empowerment. You choose it. And no guilt or shame after that, girl. It's okay. Sometimes we do that. That's okay. But anyway, we need to be aware of when we think we're hungry, we want something, and we want to satisfy that emotion of really learning how to be the adult, how to be the nurturing, caring adult for ourselves. This is that place of self-care. This is that place of advocating for yourself as a grown woman. Because I know some of us have had really, childhood issues that have happened in our lives where for whatever reason, the grown-ups in our lives did something having to do with food or trauma or these things. I'm not going to get into all that. I'm not a therapist here. But those emotions come up and our brain is trained to be satisfied, comforted with food. And so when we become aware of it, we can be the grown up that cares for that little girl on the inside. Like, I'm going to take care of you. I see that you are feeling emotional or angry and you want to just go open up and, eat a whole half gallon of ice cream to comfort those emotions inside of you, right? That understanding that now you are in charge and you can comfort that little girl and say, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. I see you. So what can we do? We have to interrupt the pattern. That's the goal here. When you're having emotional hunger, becoming aware of it, and then we want to interrupt the pattern. That's it. Because our brain and our body is on autopilot if we're not aware, and we're just going to go there and then we're going to feel guilty. But it is a practice and it's something you have to repeat. And it's not going to happen overnight if you're working on this. If you're working on changing this behavior, learning that you have this emotion, learning that when you feel this way, you suddenly want to eat these foods to comfort, to satisfy those emotions. Learning that is a skill. It just takes time. You want to have some compassion for yourself. You want to recognize it. It's not right or wrong. It just is. The wonderful, beautiful thing about this is that you can reprogram your mind. You can reprogram your thinking. It's not your fault. It's not your fault that this is programmed. So let's just look at it that way and interrupt the pattern. And maybe the first, when you start becoming aware of this, in that moment, maybe you've already stepped across that line and you've started to feed that hunger, that emotional hunger. In the middle of that, you can stop. You can identify it. You can put down the food. You can go for a walk. You can journal. You can interrupt this pattern at any time. You can interrupt the pattern at that moment. This is what I recommend if you're trying to change that pattern. Interrupt that pattern by going for a walk, maybe go away for 10 minutes, do some stretching, call a friend, listen to some music. I'm not saying to avoid the emotions. Let me make that very clear. I think it's really important that we're in tune with those emotions because the more we ignore them, you know what they say, what resists will persist. We've got to walk through those emotions. But we want to be aware of what's going on and we want to make that powerful choice. I am going to choose to do it differently. I'm going to go down a different path. I'm going to interrupt this pattern. And like I say, if you go past the line, you did it, let's interrupt the pattern there. Let's interrupt the pattern of beating ourselves up and that, having all this guilt and shame. Instead, we are going to get curious and think about that emotional hunger. What just happened? What did I just do? How can I do something different next time? And I think this part is key. How do you want to interrupt that pattern when you become aware of it? Have a plan in place. Have something else that you can do to process those emotions. and then come back. Just give yourself a break. 10 minutes. You can survive 10 minutes of some emotional hunger to identify for yourself. You deserve to give yourself that pause and decide. After about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, you decide for yourself. Have a plan that you can execute when you are aware of this emotional hunger. Okay. So, like I say, always, always want to have compassion here. I'm all about the self-compassion because, even research has shown that beating ourselves up, being hard on ourselves, that drill sergeant thing for ourselves is not conducive to our progress in our fat loss phase, in our personal growth, in anything we're trying to achieve, right? So emotional eating doesn't mean that you have failed. And let's just replace failure with feedback, because this is a skill and you are now learning how to rewire your thinking. And it takes practice just like everything else. So, girl, love yourself, give yourself compassion. Now you're nurturing those emotions and you're breaking the pattern. I hope that helps, to just take a pause and recognize this is going to go far. And it's always going to be there. It's always going to happen. Like, you're always going to, but you're going to get better and better at recognizing the difference between, the physical hunger and the emotional hunger. So one other thing that I'm going to mention before I start closing here in just a minute is some key things to do. Just going back to that idea that being hungry in a fat loss phase is normal. We need to normalize it, but we can definitely curb it with all of those tips that I just gave you. And know, in the evening, if you are slightly hungry, it's okay. And like myself, like and I'm saying this because a lot of people think, well, kitchen is closed at 6 p.m. I am not going to eat. But sometimes it's okay to eat over your calories if you are legitimately physically hungry. That's okay. And like I say, we're not here to be like, time Nazis and like, you have to be on this. You cannot eat after 6 o'clock, all these kind of things. It's different for everybody, right? Because some people don't eat late because it affects their sleep, and respect that. I get it. Make sure you're getting plenty of food throughout the day so that you don't get that hungry in the evening, right? That's one of the things that I do. But whenever I am in a cut, when I am in a calorie deficit, I do experience hunger sometimes at night. And if I know that I've hit my calorie target, I will choose to just make a hot cup of tea, maybe a little stevia in there, and enjoy that. And it satisfies me. And I go to bed. And it feels good the next day, right? How do you want to feel when you wake up the next day? I want to feel rejuvenated. I want to feel like I made great choices yesterday. That's one of the keys, right, to our success in our fat loss journey. Always thinking, how am I going to feel about this tomorrow? Because I want to be proud. And then just be like, yep, I did it again yesterday. When you wake up in the morning, you're like, man, I did great yesterday. I hit my targets yesterday. But this is complex. So I just want to reiterate that it's very individual. And I want to encourage you to be very mindful of your eating behaviors, and how your body is responding. This is all part of the fat loss phase. We have to be in touch. What works for one person isn't the same as what's going to work for somebody else. And that is you being wise about being on your journey. Don't compare your calories, your protein, your outcomes with anybody else. The goal is that you are collecting the data for yourself during your fat loss phase along the way, right? We've got to be, the better we are at collecting that data, the better information, the more data we're going to have to evaluate where we are and what's going on at the end of the day, at the end of the period of time, right? To see what our outcome is. But yeah, so that's one of the things that I do. Like, it's going to be different for everybody. Some people, and I will eat at night. It doesn't affect me, but it definitely affects a lot of people. And one other thing I want to throw out there too is, if you're not sleeping well at night, I'm just throwing this out there, in your fat loss phase, you may be over restricting your calories. That's a very high indicator. If you are being woken up throughout I know we have, hormonal changes and shifts. It could be menopause too. But if you have your hormones in check and things are pretty much balanced out, maybe you're on hormone replacement therapy or whatever, and you typically sleep well, but you're not sleeping well, it could be that you are in a severe calorie deficit, which means let's reevaluate our calories, because we don't need to be starving ourselves all day and not sleeping good at night. I mean, how good is that for our fat loss? It's not. You're going to come to a halt. Your body is not going to want to do anything. It's not going to cooperate. And we need to restore the metabolism. All right. So let's recap. Hunger is normal in a fat loss phase, but we have to understand which type of hunger we're having, and we need to respond accordingly, not react, right? And this is going to give you your power back. This is going to be key to your power. Remember, it's a skill and you can learn it and you can get better and better at it. So self-compassion here. So get curious instead of reactive. Figure it out for yourself. Maybe you want to journal it, journal that. I think that's really important. If you feel like you're all over the place, you're all over the map with this, and you don't know when you're hungry, start journaling what you're eating, when you're getting hungry, when you're not, when it's real physical hunger, when it's emotional hunger. It's great. Find a friend to hold you accountable, discuss it, and let's get on. All right. So this was fun. I hope this was very helpful to you. I do want to say I'll be having this may be, I don't know, one last time that I'll be opening Rock That Fitness membership to everybody coming up. So you don't want to miss out. When I'm dropping this episode right now, I don't have dates in front of me. I don't have dates, but if you've been thinking, you know what, I need to do this and I need the help. I want to understand my nutrition for myself individually so that you never have to be on another stupid diet again, which never works, right? Then I want to encourage you to grab the link there in the show notes and get on the wait list. Get on the wait list for the next Jumpstart Challenge, or just get on the wait list for joining Rock That Fitness so I can be there for you. This is what I'm doing right now. I'm in the middle of coaching our newest Rock That Fitness members through our first 6 weeks in group coaching together, and it's a blast. And you will learn so much about yourself and how you can manage your own fitness and your health and your fat loss journey yourself. And you can learn the skills that you need to learn to make this last. You can get your goals, achieve your goals, get your results, and maintain them. So if that's you and you've been, thinking about it, you've been on the fence, I just want to encourage you to come on in here. I'd love, I would be honored to be alongside you on your journey and help you and encourage you in that way. And yeah, that's what I got. Girl, if you found this helpful, would love to hear from you. Send me an email, anna@rockthatfitness.com. If you have any questions, I'm here for you. Find me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, all things, all things, girl. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to this episode. Thank you for tuning in. I do not take 1 minute of your time here for granted. Thank you so much for listening. I love you so much. You keep on rocking your fitness. Self-care, self-love all day, every day. Do I have your word? Good. Let's rock.